Welcome to the Volpe Report podcast, the state's premier public affairs show dedicated to the topics that matter most to Pennsylvanians. I'm your host, Chuck Volpe. Join us now as we speak to this week's guest.
The following half-hour show is a paid political program and is not endorsed by this station, management, or staff.
The following program is brought to you by Excalibur Insurance Management Services.
We welcome to today's show United States Congressman Rob Bresnahan from the 8th Congressional District, a district that covers a good swath of northeastern Pennsylvania. Rob is on today's show for two reasons. The first is to discuss a major announcement that he just made. It made news all over Pennsylvania. It's a project he's been working on since his swearing in over a year ago and has been talking about on this show for the past year. And that is the funding for rural health care for the purpose of improving access to care, strengthen clinical workforces, and the infrastructure to support those things. Rob was instrumental in securing $193 million for Pennsylvania from the Rural Health Transformation Fund, a significant portion of which will be directed to Northeast and Central Pennsylvania. We will discuss that and the impact it will have here in our area, obviously, as well as the hospital bed shortage that we're dealing with here, right in the Scranton area, as well as Wilkes-Barre. So with those things that are reaching critical stages now, there's no better time to talk about health care. The second issue we will discuss is the murder and violent crime problem we have here in northeastern Pennsylvania, and specifically in Scranton. Scranton has seen 4 murders since the holidays. That comes on the heels of a record number of homicides in Scranton a couple of years ago. The horrific rise in these crimes is directly traceable to gang activity and runaway drug use. We look forward to today's show to inform you on these important matters.
This is the Volpe Report, a weekly news and political interview show examining the latest local, state, and national issues with Chuck Volpe. Insightful, informative, controversial. The area's premier political talk show, the Volpe Report.
Congressman, welcome to the Volpe Report.
Chuck, thank you for having me on.
Pleasure. And as I said, you must be rising in stature there because I see the big dome in the background. So let's get right into it. There's usually a reason I have a guest on a show. And the reason I'm asking you to be on the show is a major announcement, a major initiative, $193 million under your stewardship. I know there's others involved. I get it. I know the president's involved, and you were at a round table with him just the other day. But the person I remember, and I'm going back a full year since you were sworn in, you've been talking about rural health, and that initiative. You were talking about it with all the debate over the one big beautiful bill. But I want to get back to what matters. $193 billion on this wonderful program. And if I understand it correctly, it's not just 1 year. It'll be 5 consecutive years, which means you are a leader in bringing $1 billion to Pennsylvania, a lot of which will be sent in your district, as well as all of Northeast and Central in our media market. Because, look, we have probably a lot more farms than we have urban centers up here, right? We're, Scranton, Wilkes-Barre, and Hazleton aside, and Pottsville and a few others, a major farm agricultural center, dairy farms. So talk about what that does and how it will impact the area, Rob.
Sure. So I think what's important to know is when we moved through the Working Family Tax Cuts Act, the original conversations about making the strategic investment into rural health and rural hospitals, it was the Senate that ended up bringing back $50 billion. And it was a big reason why we ended up supporting the Working Family Tax Cuts Act in the end, was because you think about areas like Pike County. Pike County, it does not have a hospital. They do not have an urgent care. So when you're thinking about needing emergent health in Pike County, you're commuting over 55 minutes to either Wayne Memorial or you're leaving the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And a big conversation, I actually had the opportunity to be in the White House with Vice President Vance, with CMS Administrator Dr. Oz, and the President the day of that the HR1 vote. And we were talking about, and I think you summed it up very well, where you talked about our urban areas, but we wanted to make sure that both the rural communities were going to be taken care of, as well as our more urban communities, like the cities of Scranton, like the cities of Hazleton, like Milford in Pike County, like Honesdale, because when you think about the Rural Transformation Fund at that point, and what's most important about the Rural Transformation Fund is it's not used to just band-aid over operating losses of a healthcare system. This is a strategic, targeted initiative to make healthcare more reliable and more affordable and more accessible for people in northeastern Pennsylvania. So when we saw 193 million, the anticipated release is somewhere around the end of Q1. But with all things considered, this will be, like you had said, close to $1 billion over a 5-year time frame to make transformational changes to healthcare. And obviously, it's going to be broken up strategically by different regions throughout the Commonwealth. But this is an incredible once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to really make long-term changes to what healthcare looks like in northeastern Pennsylvania. And something that we've been tracking since before I even was sworn into office was the reality of Moses Taylor and regional inside of the city of Scranton.
Right.
And it was something that, we were a part of. I think it was day minus 17 from getting sworn in. We were up at the Scranton Hilton having a dialogue about what this will mean and if these closures actually happen. And our team, Column on our team, has been involved in these hospitals every single day, working with CMS, working with the governor's team. And the governor can suggest or say whatever he wants to feel about the Rural Transformation Fund, which I did see he was appreciative of $193 million. But we've been working almost weekly with his team to figure out how we can be helpful and what resources we can provide to make sure community health systems just doesn't pull out of the city of Scranton. And we came dangerously close to having those two hospitals close back in August.
Right.
And we were able to sit down with the leadership at Community Health Systems and find a way to convince them to cover their near $2 million a month operating loss, pay it out of their own operating revenues, and make sure that the rug wasn't ripped out for healthcare inside of northeastern Pennsylvania. So we are close from what we understand with the Penner merge. It's been an evolving, living, breathing acquisition, because General Hospital then got incorporated into the acquisition. But from what we know right now is the Department of Health is in conversations with Penner at the state level, figuring out what that transition will look like. We haven't gotten any feedback in the last 72 hours, but still cautiously optimistic that healthcare will continue the way it is. And I think you have to talk about healthcare regionally. And, we had brought CMS Administrator Dr. Oz, and we had Bob Durkin from the Chamber of Commerce, and all of our leaders inside of Geisinger and CHS and Wayne Memorial. And I think we have to take a different perspective of what healthcare looks like in northeastern Pennsylvania. And by utilizing $193 million from that Rural Transformation Fund will be incredible opportunities to make sure that healthcare remains viable, solvent, and accessible for years to come.
Wonderful. You gave so much there that I'll try to go back and, parse a couple of multiple points. First of all, I think the elephant in the room you addressed. The first thing is, I've read story upon story, as you have, and that is that right now, apparently, we're at crisis stage. That Community Medical Center, is how I refer to it, it's Geisinger, is so overwhelmed at this point. They have patients in the hallway in gurneys. They've actually likened it to the worst of COVID back in 2020.
Wow.
So that's a story, Rob, I think I read in the Sunday Times just recently.
Yeah, last week.
Yeah,
last week there was an article.
So you have that going on, and then it would be infinitely worse, obviously, if the old, what I again refer to, the Moses Taylor and the Mercy, they're different now. But that regional health network that's supporting them, you talked about, suffering losses, you guys were able to convince them to stay afloat, which would put Scranton into a crisis state if they were to close down. So the first question actually I have, there was a California massive health conglomerate that was talking about. What's that?
Kaiser Permanente. They ended up acquiring Geisinger and then created the Risant Health structure from the KP acquisition of
Okay.
Geisinger.
So they're actively a part of now what's going on with Geisinger, and they will be a part of Moses Taylor and Mercy's continued.
Negative. No, Tenor is an unrelated entity.
Okay.
The issue is if KP Geisinger was to look at making the acquisition, it would then become a Department of Justice and an FTC conversation about provider ID and what kind of footprint they would have inside of northeastern Pennsylvania.
Okay.
And that's why Tenor had come to the table as a nonprofit operating out of. They have another presence out in the western part of Pennsylvania. And, there was a few different ideas about creating a regional health hub, with partnerships within the Wright Center and Allied Services and Wayne Memorial and, trying to put together a comprehensive plan. The reality is that time became critically of the essence. And Tenor had made an LOI that was accepted by Community Health System. Now, again, I'm a legislator. I'm not an M&A advisor on healthcare systems, and this is a private transaction from Community Health Systems, ultimately going to which would be Tenor. But the reality is, like you had mentioned, the inundation that our local hospital systems would have. I mean, remember this CHS and Moses Taylor Regional. That's 33,000 emergency room visits a year, wow. 1,800 NICU births a year. So we don't have the health infrastructure. And if you would have noticed recently, Geisinger had proposed an addition plan that was canceled once upon a time by someone's leadership inside of the city of Scranton and prevented them.
You mean the mayor? The mayor of Scranton.
Well, the mayor had put the kibosh to the original proposed expansion of Geisinger to expand across the street.
Of course, is your upcoming opponent. She has a primary, I think. I think someone also.
I think so.
But at any rate, she is the odds-on favorite to oppose you in November. So, and we'll get to her later because she managed to find something negative. I don't know how you could when you have $193 million coming to Pennsylvania, a significant portion of which is coming to Northeast that she claims she wants to represent, and.
Well, she also lambasted me for voting to keep the government open. So you really...
If you say wet like blue, she'll say sky, she'll say gray. If you say wet, she'll say dry. Black, you'll say... Sure. Everything you say...
She thinks that I should have shut down the government and withheld paychecks for over 10,000 federal workers inside of my district. So when somebody operates and holding the American citizens hostage, I don't really find a lot of useful... conviction in positions like that.
No doubt. A couple of things that I would have a question about, for example, because you mentioned the entities, somewhat large entities involved now. But two come to mind that I have familiarity with, and you do as well. One, in our area, I haven't heard Blue Cross Blue Shield, one of the largest health conglomerates in the world, and obviously Blue Cross of Northeastern PA. I remember the cards I carried around for 30 years. They measure in zeros into the billions, hundreds, even billions of assets. You would think it would be in their interest, because of their health network, to be involved in this process. So question number one is, where's Blue Cross Blue Shield in all this?
Another entity that we were cautiously optimistic and had conversations with on the federal level was Lehigh Valley Jefferson, with them already having a presence.
Right.
UPMC is another entity just to our west. But the reality is, this is, from what we understand, the General Hospital in Wilkes-Barre is still the profitable entity of the CHS trifecta. But there needs to be major infrastructure improvements done to these different facilities. And, I don't know if CHS, Community Health Systems, has been the best partner for our community. And, some of the conversations had come to us, and I didn't feel comfortable making financial concessions or looking at partnering with Community Health Systems when they had full intentions of basically removing themselves from our northeastern Pennsylvania healthcare footprint. Where we have pledged that, we will be a part of this transaction to make sure that you exit northeastern Pennsylvania and hand this off so there's no gaps in coverage for northeastern Pennsylvania. But obviously, we want to work with the people that are going to be making the acquisition, that are going to be making the investment into northeastern Pennsylvania and the future. So, I mean, we're not going to throw good money at bad problems. We're going to be very prudent about who we want to partner with. And Tenor has certainly stepped up to the plate here. There's been, and unfortunately, this is now being gummed up in the Department of Health at the Commonwealth level. But really, other than Tenor, that was, before I'd even come to Congress, remember Woodbridge? That was going to be another potential acquirer of those three different hospital systems. But unfortunately, that haul fell apart even long before I even think I filed to run for Congress.
Wow.
But the reality is, this is what we have right now. We're standing ready. We have been a constant go-between. The foundations were literally fronting the operating losses of community health systems. And I want to thank the foundations for really stepping up to the plate. But we also just can't expect northeastern Pennsylvania to just indefinitely subsidize a for-profit healthcare system. We need to be able to bring this to a resolution and transition care into whoever that subsequent provider will be.
Sure. Well stated. You answered my question about why some of the big ones wouldn't even be sniffing around this. I would think, the way I look at a business model is that investment, you have the greatest leverage, the greatest security for your investment if, let's say, you're Blue Cross Blue Shield, because you now have that network. They're all going to have Blue Cross Blue Shield cards. They're going to all present that for payment, and those payments will effectively subsidize the money you would be putting into it. So that's why at that level, I'm encouraged.
I'll tell you, healthcare itself, Chuck, is just it's a layer of an onion, and it's layer after layer after layer. And the complexities, and we're very fortunate. I have an incredible staff, and we've been a quick understudy here on navigating, healthcare as an entirety, whether it's enhanced premium tax credits, what we did through the Working Family Tax Cuts Act, and now literally in the mergers and acquisitions of a healthcare system and a hospital partner in northeastern Pennsylvania. So I'll tell you, it's something that we have dedicated a lot of resources internally, a lot of brain capacity as well, to make sure that we have our finger on the pulse and we're keeping our eye on the ball here, because this is fundamental for the future of northeastern Pennsylvania, on top of making sure that we're working with the Pike County commissioners to partner with them to make sure that we are providing every available resource that we can as a member of Congress to make sure that we attract an urgent care or some kind of micro hospital system up to that Pike County area, so they can make sure that healthcare isn't just secondary to their ways of life. So healthcare has obviously been a very involved conversation, and I don't think it's something that we should be running away from. We can be embracing healthcare. I'm sure, as you know, I voted for the continuation of the enhanced premium tax credits for a 3-year extension.
Yes.
Do I love the 3-year clean extension policy? Absolutely not.
Right.
But the reality is that you just couldn't rip the rug out from nearly 30,000 people inside of northeastern Pennsylvania. I was super supportive of, there was 3 different proposed legislations. One was a 1-year clean extension period. 2 was a 1-year clean extension, and 2nd year with reforms. I was personally super supportive of the 3rd option that had 700% federal poverty limits for eligibility, a de minimis monthly payment. So, whether it was $1 a month or $5 a month, it would root out all of the waste and the fraud and the phantom enrollees.
Sure.
Making sure people knew that they were actually receiving health insurance coverage for a product, and that they didn't actually transition off because they had sought new employment or they qualified for Medicaid. Also scrubbing the death records quarterly, making sure that we're not providing or paying for insurance for dead people. So we took a really pragmatic, common sense approach. Unfortunately, we never had an opportunity to vote on that because of the rules committee process. So what our intention was 17 Republicans ended up voting for final passage of a 3-year clean extension, with the hopes of working with the Senate and passing something with reforms like the federal poverty limit, like the de minimis monthly payments, scrubbing the death records, making sure that you don't have people receiving enhanced premium credits when they don't need them. And I think you have to remember, many people that receive their health insurance through the enhanced premium tax credits are independent contractors, are people in between work, that don't necessarily qualify for Medicaid coverages. And, we were talking about Medicaid. If you truly need Medicaid, it will remain available for you. It is not, don't believe the fear mongering and the $5.5 million that Democrats have decided to spend against me, which reminds me that I'm still the #1 spend in the entire United States by Democrats. Out of all of the Republican members of Congress, I am the #1 spend by Democrats perpetuating their propaganda.
Yeah, well, congratulations. I heard a long time ago, you can measure a person's success as much by their list of enemies as you can by their friends. And right now, the most heavy artilleried, leftist, progressive, radical, socialist wing of the Democratic Party has targeted you in a big way. They have their banner carrier, the mayor of Scranton, of course, who is from really not from Scranton, is from Oregon, is from a progressive hub. All you have to do if you want to know how the progressive policies work, Rob, as you often do, as we talk about, take a look at the city of Portland. How that's working. Oregon was the first state to legalize all class 1 narcotics and not make it a crime. Incredible. Yeah, crystal meth, PCP, heroin, name it, cocaine, all good. Because it's another issue. It's not an addiction problem or a medical problem or a criminal problem, but so it's somewhat amazing.
Chuck, I ran on 3 things. I ran on an economy that works, communities that are safe, and borders that are secure. And I think the third pillar here, we can confidently say that we have the southern border and the northern border officially under control.
Secure.
Something we were able to deliver on was another $500,000, $500,000 for the city of Scranton for technology and equipment upgrades. Because if you've been following or reading any publication, what you're seeing happening in the city of Scranton, the murders, people being hacked to death by machetes, the amount of drugs, people being ran over by vehicles, it is out of control.
Right.
And we're going to make damn sure that we're going to make sure we fund our local police departments. And just today, we will be voting on a series of different minibuses. We were able to deliver over $1 million for the Kingston Police Department so they can invest into the front camera systems. We've been able to make other investments down in Monroe County, Chestnut Hill Township, so they can invest in new fire apparatus. So we're going to continue to deliver. And I remember something we talked about on one of my very first shows. I promised that when I won my seat in Congress, I would be in a position to deliver for Northeastern Pennsylvania starting on day 1. And this package alone that we're going to be voting on will return over $11.5 million for Northeastern Pennsylvania. And cumulatively, when this is all said and done, it'll be over $20 million, not counting the $68 million that we were just successful in bringing back for Toby Hanna Army Depot, and for their expansion of their radar systems and their drone programs through the NDAA reauthorization. So we are investing in Northeastern Pennsylvania's future. And it starts with that foundation. You have to have safe communities. You have to be able to walk outside of your door, feel safe getting in your vehicle and going to work. And it starts and stops there.
Well, we have multiple neighborhoods in Scranton that's not the case right now. We had in one 12-month period, and this is on the authority of the district attorney and the Democratic senator, confirmed this, the most homicides in Scranton in the history of the city. So you mean that?
It starts with leadership. It starts at the top. It starts with leadership. And when you're not going to make the necessary investments and you're not going to be tough on crime, it's non-negotiable. And that's why, obviously, we're going to play our part as a federal legislator. We're going to pass proper legislation that actually holds people accountable. Criminals that commit crimes will be deported. If they rape our people, and you want to talk about rape statistics, they're also up hundreds and hundreds of percents in the city, just the city of Scranton alone. So we have to make sure that we continue to invest into our police activities and thank our first responders, our police officers, our firefighters, our EMS, the people that throw themselves into danger every single day. We were able to also return close to $400,000 for other equipment upgrades for the city of Wilkes-Barre, because you have to think about having safe communities. It's the foundation of the hierarchy of a community, and you need to be tough on crime. And I think we're going to continue to support fiscal financial investments into these departments so they have the resources to recruit. We have to stop vilifying our police officers And we love working with our FOPs and our law enforcement community because they're the best advocates. They're the ones that are telling us what we need to do. Another thing we could talk about is that we have the most dangerous federal penitentiary on the East Coast, Canaan Federal Penitentiary, up in Wayne County. It's and again, you're talking about federal workers when you want to shut down the federal government and keep our federal workforce from receiving a paycheck. Don't go tell the correction officers up at Canaan Federal Penitentiary that's where Eric Williams was murdered. That's the reality of what we're dealing with when you're willing to hijack the federal government at the expense of the American people, and it's not okay.
Yeah, I know you're as concerned about it as I am. Believe it or not, we just blew through a half an hour. Didn't even have time for a commercial break. So I want to thank you.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Well, it's been very illuminating. And one final point before you go, I said I had a few things to ask you, and then I got sidetracked. One of the things I've always been concerned about, and I think your transformation fund addresses it, lack of EMT infrastructure. If you're having a heart attack in Wayne County, you might be waiting a long time.
You're right. A third of the roads are paved. I mean, it's truly rural America.
So I know funding is going for that too, to improve that, the infrastructure and all of that, so that when people have a medical emergency, they can actually have someone respond to it.
Yeah, and you know what? Actually, this is the CPF list that we'll be delivering back to Northeastern Pennsylvania, hopefully today. One of them includes, I would love to. So we have the Wayne and Pike County Career Technical Center. The only out of 67 counties in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, Wayne and Pike County don't have a CTC. So we've been awarded $3 million for the Wayne and Pike County Career Technical School. Monroe County Goose Pond Dam Project, structural rehabilitation for 40,000 residents that if we don't get this corrected, they're going to be drawn into some flood zones. So that's another $2.4 million. State Route 6 over Wallenpaupack Creek Bridge, talking about infrastructure and getting ambulances to hospitals. That's $2 million. The Eastern Pike County Sewer Extension, that was funded in a prior project or the prior ag bill at $1.675 million. The West End Fire Company, Chestnut Hill Township, $1,170,000 for fire apparatus. This is a really cool one, Chuck. The Veterans Permanent Supportive Housing in Wayne County. Acquire and renovate properties to create 15 units of workforce and veteran supportive housing at $1.5 million. The Monroe County Wastewater Treatment Project, because this is the treatment center for the prison in Monroe County, something that has been decrepit for an extended period of time, $1,250,000. Kingston Municipal Police, $1,144,000 for police upgrades. City of Wilkes-Barre was $372,000. Monroe County DA opioid crime section. There was some scuttlebutt between Susan Wild and Ryan McKenzie, who represent PA7, that they didn't submit on this. And I said, what's the scuttlebutt? We did it. $1,020,000 to expand opioid crime reduction programming across Monroe, Carbon, and Pike counties, and some other different infrastructure investment projects. So we'll be following the press releases. We're going to get that across the finish line hopefully this afternoon. And thanks so much for having me on.
Thanks so much, Congressman, and keep up the good work you're doing for all of us here. And it is really refreshing to hear your perspective and your view on things that are so much in line with the constituents you represent in Northeast Pennsylvania. Good luck on your work, and I know you have to get back to session. Thanks, Rob.
Thanks, Chuck.
Thanks for joining us for this edition of the Volpe Report podcast. Be sure to visit our YouTube and Facebook pages for upcoming episodes. You can catch up on the Volpe Report podcast on your favorite podcast provider.